Welcome to Change, produced by the Senior Bond of Schaumburg, where nutritious meals, friendly peers, and social activities are available every day of the week. Under the able direction of Marina Lvovich, the cost and location are available to everyone. We seniors meet monthly to discuss, as a panel, to discuss events that have occurred in the past, the near past, and the future. Today our program is on challenges faced in the 30s and 40s. We have as our guests this month 3 ladies from Friendship Village. I would like to introduce our panel. We have Santina Viviano Deneen, who was born in Jessup, Pennsylvania, lived in Michigan for a while before moving to Schaumburg. She's been a resident of Friendship Village for 10 years and has 8 children, 20 grandchildren, and 9 great-grandchildren. She doesn't look it, does she, ladies? She formerly was employed at Schaumburg High School. We have Lo Ostrand, who was born in Boone, Iowa, but has lived in Illinois, Indiana, California, and Florida before she finally settled in Friendship Village and has been here for 9.5 years. And she has 3 children, 6 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. Have to catch up. She formerly worked for AT&T in marketing and sales. Peg Sutton was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, but lived in Connecticut until finally settling in Illinois for the last 62 years. She has lived at Friendship Village for 8 years and has 4 children and 10 grandchildren. And I am Lori Candle, born in Brooklyn, New York, and having lived in Schaumburg and Hoffman Estates for the past 45. You beat me, Peg. I am a former elementary school teacher, and I have 2 children, 2 grandchildren, 4 grand dogs, and 1 grand horse. There are numerous times when we, as a nation and a people, have endured difficulties as time has progressed through the years. Many were overcome with strength, resolution, and/or endurance. The past 20th century provided many of these opportunities, but with the amazing fortitude, our nation and people marched forward. Faced with World War I, our patriotism increased our unity and determination. Our country was also changing from agricultural to industrial. All seemed well until Black Thursday in 1929, when the Great Depression became a reality. Our nation suffered, families suffered, people suffered, jobs lost meant no money to buy the necessities of life. Poverty prevailed across the nation. Added to this was the drought that caused the Dust Bowl migration. President Roosevelt established many organizations to help relieve these situations. Then came World War II. Young men were drafted, sent into fighting, facing death at every moment to preserve our freedom. Women were doing men's work on the home front. Citizens were recycling paper and metals for the war effort. There was rationing of gas, clothing, certain foods, but it united us even further. With the war's end, a time of prosperity and change began to occur. The civil rights movement took root. John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Bobby Kennedy were assassinated. We entered the Vietnam War. The burning of draft cards, the hippie movement, protests became the norm. The remainder of the century led us to getting back on our feet again. It was almost a time of stability brought on by the strength of resolution and the endurance of the values we cherished. Changes of the past had changed our lives, and our lives at present will change our lives in the future. And just as our nation and its people face challenging times, so have we throughout our lives. Although none of us here were really present for World War I, we all did live through the Great Depression and beyond. Let's regress and go back on those times. And as children during the Great Depression, we seemed to gloss over difficulties they were beyond our age, and they were our parents' difficulties. Although my memories of 30s is limited also, I can be remembered being told about my grandfather, who was a successful builder and lost everything with the Great Depression except the house he lived in. And one day a gentleman came and offered him a deal he couldn't refuse. He would give him a dairy farm in exchange for his home in Brooklyn, New York. My grandfather said yes. And that dairy farm was a great blessing to our entire family during the Depression years. And several of you here have lived on farms. How did it help your family survive while the rest of the world was really having difficulties? Lo?
Well, I grew up on a farm. My father had a dairy farm. And we were tenant farmers mostly. We didn't own the first farms that we lived on. But because we grew our vegetables and had chickens and pigs and beef and eggs and milk, we didn't suffer as much as a lot of other people. We did a lot of things for ourselves. They used to say, if you can't do it yourself, why, it may not get done. But we did make our own clothes. We did a lot of our own baking and whatever else had to be done.
You were self-sufficient.
We did it.
You
yes.
were self-sufficient.
So we were very fortunate, and because
Right.
we needed the gasoline for the tractors to farm, and we needed other materials.
In the 30s, did you have tractors? I
Oh,
know
yes.
we used horses and wagons.
We had both.
Oh, you were rich. And how about you?
Well, my dad was involved in farming. He would have loved to live on a farm, but Mother wasn't for living on a farm, so we lived in a small town. And we had a garden in the backyard, but Dad was out on the farm all the time, so he would get all your vegetables and fruits and things like that we needed. So we weren't deprived of the food. And he grew up in the 1880s, so he was a real worker, and we didn't know what was happening as
Can we
far
pick
as...
this up in the next segment, because we do have to take a short break at this time. Peggy was saying that you were just as self-sufficient even with a small little garden.
Right, but one thing that I do remember strongly, we lived in a small town with a railroad track, New York Central, running through it. And there would be people hopping the train and jumping off at our town and going around to different houses and asking for food. And my mother would feed them, but our house, there was a walkway between the garage and the house, and she never let them in the house, but she did feed these people.
And I think even I heard that they used to mark the posts of the houses where people were generous enough to feed them so that others would actually know.
Right.
And how about you, Santina?
Well, getting back to that again, my mom and dad had this house with a couple of barns and a lot of land. They purchased this piece of land where their house was on, and across the street was another piece of land that my dad turned into an not just apples, but a fruit orchard. Had every fruit tree imaginable, and
They had dessert.
Yeah, we had berries there, and huckleberries, blueberries, whatever. It was all in there, and so we had chickens and goats. We had goats.
Did you have a goat cart?
It was a cart. Yeah, I guess it was a goat cart. We used to use that to put the hay on, and when the hay was cut and dried, we'd put it on there to take it over to the barn.
Okay.
To pitch it up into the loft.
Yes.
Fun days.
Yes, I know. I always wanted to go up in that loft, and Grandpa would say no, because it could slide and it could be dangerous.
Well, we'd get up there and jump down on the hay then, and my mother would just...
That was fun.
Hard.
You never know. We as kids don't fear anything.
Yeah, we didn't.
But with that, we've all said resilience is all about being able to overcome the unexpected, and sustainability is about survival. And the goal of resilience is to thrive, and that was said by Jaime Casio. As we quoted before, the goal of resilience is to thrive. That we did. As teenagers and beyond, when we entered the war years of the 40s. It's funny to realize that the young of today feel recycling is new, but we're old hands at it. Why was recycling so important during the war?
Well, I think the metals were scarce during the war. They needed them to build ships and things like that, so we were encouraged to save paper and aluminum, and they had a thing called a scrap drive every once in a while. I didn't know I remembered that, but it did come into my memory, and I remember putting balls of foil in this big bag, and then we take it to this scrap drive.
And we didn't have aluminum foil. It
No.
came from cigarettes
Right,
and gum.
right.
That's
And you
right.
make a big ball
That's
out of
right.
it.
Yes, and the bigger the better.
Yeah.
And we would also save fat and take
Yeah.
the fat to
Cooking
the meat market. And the meat market would give us certain points toward buying meat.
Right, because that was rationed,
Yes,
wasn't it?
meat was rationed, and the fat was used for ammunition.
Right. So we recycle, but why do you suppose we had rationing? What was the purpose behind that?
Well, I think part of it was to support the armies that were overseas, that we had to send food and ammunition and things like that to support the armies, and so that took it away from home.
Right.
And I think that one of the other reasons why we recycled so much is that we didn't have money. And so you made do with what you could find, and that way you would be able to make it through.
Right, and I think too it equalized everything. I remember, I think it was 2 pair of shoes a year per child. And heaven forbid you got a hole in your shoes. So
Yeah.
it was a trip to the OPA to see if you could get more tickets.
Or out came the
No,
cardboard.
you would-
My
you
dad
would- you would put
trace
the-
it and
right,
he would cut
put
it.
it in.
He had such patience and fill that shoe up with this. What do you call them now? You go to the
Inner
Insoles.
Yeah, inner soles.
Well, during the war, there wasn't any nylon either, and I can remember one gal as a teenager had a pair of nylons, and all of us went to the house to see this pair of nylons because she put them on and everyone thought they were just beautiful. Because the nylon was used for parachute and things
And
like
everything
that.
else. They used to paint their legs. I never did.
Yeah,
but
yeah, we
I
did.
did. Draw
the
And
line
then
down.
draw
Yes, the line down the middle.
God forbid that
was
line was
important.
not straight when you put those
Right.
stockings on.
There were lots of things that we could remember about meat rationing, sugar and butter.
Sugar. I remember something. I had a friend who was in the service, a school friend, and he came back on leave one time, and he brought me 5 pounds of sugar.
Wow, that was
And
gold.
He was
Yes.
bribing it's for my mother, really. But he wanted to date me, I guess, and I didn't want to, but I got the sugar.
Well, I know with the butter rationing, if my mother heard about it, she'd get us on the line with a little coupons because she could only get just a
Right.
little bit.
Yeah.
And it really made us careful of waste. We
That
did
was
not
it.
waste anything. So we have a lot of memories of it. Did any member of your family join the Army or Navy or that?
Cousins.
Yeah.
I didn't have any brothers, and my father was too old to be drafted. But I had several cousins that were in the Army and in Europe, and one was a parachute over in Japan. And
Yeah, the
so,
Pacific and the European
Yes.
theaters that we had.
yes, so
I had
family and school friends.
Right, yeah.
I had 2 uncles. My mother was one of 13 children, 7
Big
boys,
families.
and seven girls and 6 boys. 2 of the boys were in the service,
And that was really
they came
hard.
back. Thank God, you know.
Right, thank God for that. Okay, we know that General Patton said if we accept the challenges, we should accept the challenges so that we can feel the exhilaration of victory. We did, and we won. We'll be back right after a short break. William Glasser said, "We're driven by genetic means, survival, love and belonging, power, freedom, and fun." Let's have a little fun now. This is really a Depression World War II dessert that was made. And all you need is graham crackers. I use chocolate cooking pudding, then Cool Whip, and this is the modern part of it all. Putting it all together by layering graham crackers pudding, and mixing half a box with a full box with a container, half a container. We have the unveiling.
Ta-da!
That looked good.
We have our chocolate pudding cake, which all of you will share as we get finished.
Wow.
The 21st century is now upon us, literally. The 20th century was a growing period for each of us. What would you say was the greatest national challenge we faced in the last century, and how did you handle it?
Well, I think one of the greatest challenges was supporting the family, and I think it made us more aware of our communities and other people who were having difficulties supporting. I think we were more sharing community and helping people, and I think that is something we should carry forward more strongly than we have.
Exactly.
I think trying to stay positive during those hard times was difficult sometimes, because you have things in your family that are going on that are sad times, and in your country, and it's just sometimes gets to be too much.
Right. You have to avoid depression.
Yes.
Keep an optimistic outlook.
Yes.
Peg, what
In
about
talking to the children during this time, and they were sort of asking about World War II, and I was saying how the country all came together, and they just couldn't imagine, you know, the rationing and everyone coming together. And then 9/11 came. And I was talking to one of them on the phone who had just landed, and I said, "Now do you realize?" And he said, "Yes." Said, "It's amazing."
Well, you know, you have to experience something to really appreciate the difficulties associated with disasters and catastrophes, whether they be natural or man-made. What advice would you give to today's generation then? Building on what you just said was a challenge, what would you suggest, Santina?
Live your life with God as your leader and follow Him. Stay positive. Achieve what you can achieve at your best, you know. Do your best.
That's good advice.
Be
Yes.
kind to your parents.
I think,
Oh, yes.
yes, particularly that.
Respect your parents.
Yes.
Well, I think that the tendency in current times is to become more of a me generation and focuses on me. I think we need to widen our scope, that we are not the only ones here, that we need to be open to other people, other religions, other nationalities, because that's where we will get our strength.
Right, we can't be isolationist
No.
and think only of ourselves. We have to look around the world. It's a global community. Peg, what would you say?
Well, I think it's because of all the electronics and your telephones and your Twitters that the world has become as small as our little town or what was back then, when you think that some of us didn't have telephones and things like that, and now the world has become.
We are connected. I'd like to introduce Rob Palekis, who is the production manager of the Prairie Center for the Arts. He is in charge of the Senior Follies, and he's going to tell us about the auditions and presentation, and we hope many people will participate. Rob?
Well, thank you for having me on, Lori. I'm here to talk about Schaumburg Senior Follies. And actually, I've actually been down here before to talk about it, and I'm back again because we know your viewers like to hear about community events and activities and opportunities for senior citizens. Senior Follies started 5 years ago. It was an idea of one of our Schaumburg Cultural Commission members, Betty Solomon, who would spend part of her year in Florida, and she noticed that this was a very popular event in Florida. So she thought, why don't we have a Senior Follies, a senior talent show in Schaumburg? So we looked into it, and we had auditions, and lo and behold, 5 years later, it's going strong. So we're so happy to have the support of our senior citizens in coming out to audition and coming out to see the show, to bring families. It's really a great time. So what people can do if they're interested in auditioning, well, first of all, we take any kind of talent. Okay, we love people who sing. We've had people who've done breakdancing before. We've had tap dancers. We've had ballroom dancers. We've had comedians. We're pretty much anything under the sun. We'd love to spotlight that kind of talent. So we do. So if anyone's interested, what they can do is show up to audition on March 30th. That is a Thursday, March 30th at 2 o'clock. Or 7 o'clock, so they can come either in the afternoon or the evening at the Prairie Center. So 2 p.m. or 7 p.m. March 30th. You don't need an appointment. You don't need a reservation. You just show up. We will have a piano accompanist there. If you're a singer, you can bring the sheet music. And we do recommend that you do bring the sheet music. As good as our pianist is, he may not know the song. So bring the sheet music. If you want to sing to a CD track that you bring along, you can do that as well. We'll have a CD player that we can play. Or if you're just someone who, we have a gentleman who's a folk singer, plays guitar and sings, just bring it and do it. So we'll try to accommodate you any way we can. We have the audition on the stage. There's plenty of room. And any act, again, is fine. The one requirement is that you are at least 62 years of age and over. And you can be a solo artist. You can bring a group. We've had a tap dance troupe here before. It's been great. We know the more the merrier is what we say. So the audition is Thursday, March 30th. Here at the Prairie Center. We have one rehearsal. It's a dress rehearsal. So that's going to be a mandatory rehearsal on Thursday, April 20th, and then it's showtime on Sunday, April 23rd at 2 p.m. And it's so fun because the tickets sell very well. And it is a community production. I mean, this isn't one of our big Prairie Center shows. It's a community event. Yet we get so much support and so many people who come out to see it. Not just senior citizens, people, all ages. And we do have a lot of people who bring families. It's a wonderful show. It's a variety show, a community variety show featuring the wonderful talents of these people who may have performed professionally, who still perform for area senior centers and other community centers. or people have just done it because they love it, and and the talent definitely shows. So, and the show, the performance itself, the tickets I think are only $5 each. You can just call the Prairie Center at 847-895-3600, or go to our website at www.prairiecenter.org. You can always call us, call the main number if you have any questions for us. Anyone in our staff can help you out. I can help you out. Again, 847-895-3600. Auditions, March 30th, 2 p.m. or 7 p.m. We look forward to seeing as many people come and try out. So thanks a lot.
Well, I'd like to leave you with this final thought of Martin Luther King. He said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope." I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here and partaking in the panel. And we'd like to invite everyone to visit the barn, where we have many activities, parties, enjoyment. We make friends, we talk, we gossip. But we have very nutritious meals for a very, very convenient price. The number for the barn will be on the bottom of your screen. And please give a call, come and visit us. Thank you all. God bless you all. God bless the world. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.